Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Are you ready to jump into the world of microcontroller programmers? Because we're about to unpack everything you need to know about hiring them. And guess what? We've got some awesome insights from the pros over at theperfectdeveloper.com. Speaking of theperfectdeveloper.com, you know what's really cool? They have this amazing 5 questions tool. I highly recommend checking it out. It's super helpful for figuring out exactly what you should be looking for in a microcontroller programmer. Let's get started. First things first, let's break it down. What exactly is a microcontroller programmer?
Well, think of them as the masterminds behind all those tiny computers that power our devices. They write the code, which we call firmware, that makes all sorts of embedded systems work. We're talking everything from your trusty coffee maker to the anti-lock brakes in your car.
Wow, it's a pretty wide range.
Yeah.
So what sets microcontroller programmers apart from, say, a web developer?
It's all about the environment they work in. Microcontrollers have limited resources, things like processing power and memory. So these programmers are like efficiency ninjas. They have to squeeze every bit of performance out of these tiny devices. They often use languages like C and C++ out. Plus, they need a deep understanding of the hardware they're working with, almost like an electrical engineer.
So it's a pretty specialized skill set then. I bet a lot of people are wondering, how much does it cost to hire someone with this kind of expertise?
That's the million-dollar question. Salaries can vary a lot, depending on experience and location, but theperfectdeveloper.com actually gives us a pretty good idea. In the US, you're probably looking at somewhere between $80,000 to $120,000 per year. And of course, super experienced engineers can make even more.
Those are some impressive numbers. But what if you don't need someone full-time? Like, what if you just have a short-term project? Does the hiring model change then?
Absolutely. Theperfectdeveloper.com really stresses finding the right fit for your needs. If it's a short-term thing or you need a very specific skill set, freelancers can be a great option. They often have really focused expertise and tons of experience.
Makes sense. Sometimes you need someone who can jump right in and get things done. So let's say you decided to hire a microcontroller programmer and you've even got some potential candidates lined up. How do you actually figure out if they've got the skills you need? What should you be looking for?
It's a bit like being a detective. You're searching for clues that tell you this person really knows their stuff. Obviously, you want someone who's comfortable with C or C++ way, but it goes deeper than just knowing the language, right? It's about understanding how to write really efficient code within those microcontroller limitations.
So there's more to it than just coding skills. What else should we be looking at?
You want someone who gets those hardware limitations. They need to understand how the code is going to interact with the actual physical parts of the system. Asking about their debugging experiences can be really telling, You can get a sense for how they solve problems under pressure.
That makes a lot of sense. So a microcontroller programmer needs a bit of a hardware background too. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. Say you've got your short list and you're ready to start interviewing. What are some of those make or break questions that can help you make the right decision?
Theperfectdeveloper.com has some excellent advice here. Start by getting a feel for their experience with different types of microcontrollers. Some programmers specialize, They might focus on certain architectures. So you need someone whose background matches your project.
Right, so you need to match their expertise to the hardware you're using.
Okay.
That makes sense. What other questions can help you sort of gauge their skills?
Oh, absolutely. Don't be afraid to get a little technical. You can ask about specific communication protocols they've worked with. Things like SPI or I2C, those are pretty common ways for microcontrollers to talk to other devices. And like we were talking about before, dig into those debugging stories. Ask them about a time they ran into a really tricky bug and how they figured it out. That'll give you a glimpse into how they think and how they approach problems.
Yeah, it's about understanding their process, not just what they've memorized, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to step back for a second and ask a bigger question. Why use microcontrollers in the first place? What are the pros and cons?
That's a great question. Microcontrollers have some serious advantages, especially when you're thinking about cost and power consumption. They're super efficient, perfect for things that run on batteries. And because they're designed for specific tasks, they can be really cost-effective.
But I'm guessing there are some downsides too. They can't all be perfect, right?
Well, of course. One of the biggest limitations is their processing power and memory. They're not meant for super complex calculations or running huge applications. And because of those limitations, programming them can be tough.
It's all about picking the right tool for the job, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of tools, what kind of software and hardware do these microcontroller programmers use? But they have some pretty cool stuff.
Oh, they do. They use something called IDEs, which stands for Integrated Development Environments. It's where they write the code, compile it, and debug it. They also use debuggers, which are these hardware tools that let them step through their code line by line. And just like any good software developer, they use version control to keep everything organized and collaborate.
Wow, you lost me at IDEs. It sounds like they've got everything they need. All right, so now for the question everyone's thinking about, timelines. How long does it actually take to develop firmware for a microcontroller?
That is the big question, isn't it? ThePerfectDeveloper.com breaks it down into 3 categories: simple, medium, and complex. Simple projects, like maybe controlling some LEDs, could take just a few weeks. But complex projects, ones with lots of sensors and communication protocols, those can take months, sometimes even a year or more.
Wow, that's a huge range. So setting realistic expectations is key. Okay, let's wrap things up with some of the most important takeaways. What are the absolute must-dos when you're hiring a microcontroller programmer?
Well, the most important thing is to have a super clear project scope. The more detail you can give them up front, the better. That way they can give you accurate timelines and cost estimate.
Yeah, of course, you've got to check their hardware knowledge.
Absolutely. Oh, and here's a pro tip from theperfectdeveloper.com. Consider doing a trial project. It's kind of like a test drive before you go all in. You get to see how they work and if their skills are a good match.
I love that. So it's all about finding the right person, someone who understands what you're trying to do, someone who can actually make your vision a reality.
Exactly. Choosing the right microcontroller programmer can make or break your project.
So we've covered a ton about hiring these microcontroller wizards, but before we go, I want to look ahead. What's next for this whole field? What kind of cool stuff is on the horizon for microcontrollers?
Oh man, it's a really exciting time to be in this world. With the Internet of Things exploding, microcontrollers are popping up everywhere. They're the brains behind smart homes, wearables, even industrial automation. And as processing power keeps getting better and cheaper, we're going to see even more innovation, more complex applications. It's going to be wild.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about all the possibilities. Like, we could be headed towards a world where microcontrollers are just seamlessly integrated into everything.
Exactly. Imagine your fridge ordering groceries when you're running low, or your car talking to traffic lights to make your commute smoother. The potential is limitless.
That's incredible. And who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be the ones building these amazing things.
You never know. It's a field that's wide open for anyone with the passion and the skills to jump in.
So there you have it, folks. We've explored the ins and outs of hiring a microcontroller programmer. We talked about their unique skill set, the whole hiring process, and even got a glimpse of what the future holds. Hopefully, you're feeling more prepared to tackle your own microcontroller projects now.
Absolutely. Finding the right programmer can make all the difference.
And don't forget, theperfectdeveloper.com is your one-stop shop for all things developer-related. Their 5 questions tool is an awesome way to start your search. Just head over to theperfectdeveloper.com and give it a try. Well, that wraps up our deep dive on microcontroller programmers.
It's been a blast. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And everyone listening, keep those creative juices flowing. Remember, sometimes the tiniest devices can make the biggest impact. Until next time, happy hiring, everyone.